Mira woke up early the next morning with the image of the countryside house still fresh in her mind. She made breakfast for Ravi while her thoughts kept returning to the old wooden floors, the dusty shelves, and the quiet backyard. She had felt something unusual during the visit, not frightening, but strange enough to stay in her thoughts. The house seemed to carry memories that wanted attention. As she cleaned the kitchen, she decided that she would move there soon. She did not want to delay the decision any longer. By the end of that week, Mira had gathered cardboard boxes from a local store. She began packing slowly, keeping only the things she truly needed. Her apartment felt crowded and noisy as she emptied the shelves. Ravi helped by folding his clothes and choosing which toys he wanted to take with him. He talked about the countryside every day, saying he wanted to explore the garden and look for small animals under the rocks. His excitement gave Mira the strength she needed to continue. On the day of the move, Mira hired a small truck driver who agreed to take their boxes to the countryside for a fair price. The journey felt different from their first visit. This time, the house was not just a place to explore. It was going to be their new home. Mira watched the buildings disappear behind them and felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She whispered a quiet promise to herself that she would make this new beginning work, no matter what. When they reached the house, Mira unlocked the door again and stepped inside. The air felt familiar now, not as heavy as before. She opened the windows to let sunlight in. Ravi ran from room to room with a joyful energy that filled the old house with life. Mira placed the boxes along the hallway and decided to clean first before unpacking. She started with the front room. She wiped the dust from the shelves, cleaned the wooden floor, and washed the windows until they looked clear again. The room slowly changed from quiet and abandoned to warm and welcoming. Ravi helped her by carrying small objects to the kitchen. While she dusted the top of a bookshelf, she found a small photograph frame lying face down. Inside it was an old picture of her Uncle Harish standing beside the same house. His expression was calm, and his hands rested on a walking stick. Mira felt a pang of sadness as she looked at him. She wished she had visited him more often. The cleaning took several hours. By afternoon, the house felt brighter and more alive. Ravi sat on the floor eating a sandwich while Myra walked around to see if she had missed anything. When she returned to the attic, she noticed something she had not seen during their first visit. On the far left corner of the attic floor, a wooden plank seemed slightly raised on one side. She bent down and touched it carefully. The board moved a little. Mira paused and listened. The attic was silent. She pushed the board again, lifting it enough to peek underneath. To her surprise, she saw a cloth bundle wrapped tightly and placed in a shallow space beneath the floor. Something about the bundle made her heart thump faster. She did not know what it was, but she felt her uncle had hidden it for a reason. She lifted the plank fully and reached for the bundle. It was heavier than she expected. She carried it slowly down the attic steps and placed it on the bedroom floor where there was more light. Ravi entered the room and asked what she had found. Myra told him she did not know yet. She unwrapped the cloth carefully and found a small wooden box inside. The box was dark brown with a simple design. The lid had a faint carving of a tree. Mira ran her fingers along the smooth edges. The box looked old but well cared for. Her uncle had chosen a good place to hide it. She opened the lid slowly. Inside the box, she found something unexpected. Neatly arranged gold pieces lay on a folded cloth. They shined softly, even in the dim light of the bedroom. Mira stared at them in complete silence. She counted them one by one and realized they were worth a large amount of money, probably close to $200,000. Ravi watched with wide eyes, asking what it all meant. Mira took a deep breath, unsure how to answer. The gold was surprising, but something else inside the box caught her attention. A small notebook lay beneath the folded cloth. It was thin, with a faded cover and pages that looked fragile. Myra lifted the notebook gently. When she opened it, she saw her uncle's handwriting. The first line was written with strong letters, and it made her pause. It said, "They will take everything from us if we are not careful." Mira felt confused by the sentence. It did not sound like a warning of harm. Instead, it sounded like her uncle had been worried about losing something important. She continued reading. The notebook explained that her uncle had discovered a group of people in town who had been taking land from families by convincing them to sign papers they did not understand. Many families in the countryside had lost their property this way. Her uncle had found copies of forged documents and kept them hidden because he did not trust anyone with the truth. He had written that if the wrong people found out he had this information, they would try to destroy his peace and efforts. Mira read each line with growing disbelief. Her uncle had been trying to protect the families, but he never told anyone about it. The sentence written on the first page was his way of warning that people would lose their future, their homes, and their stability if the truth remained hidden. The notebook was not about danger to life. It was about the danger of losing security and home. She turned the pages slowly. Her uncle had described dates, names, and small details of conversations he had overheard. He had written about families who trusted the wrong people because they did not know how to read complicated documents. Mira felt a deep respect for her uncle. He had chosen to protect others quietly without wanting recognition. Ravi sat beside her, listening as she explained the stories. He asked why his great-uncle had not told anyone. Mira said maybe he had tried but did not know who to trust. The town was small, and information traveled fast. If the wrong person learned about the notebook, the truth could be buried easily. Mira felt a responsibility growing in her heart. Her uncle had trusted her enough to leave the house to her. Maybe he hoped she would find the box one day. She placed the notebook and gold back inside the box and sat quietly for a moment. The room felt heavy with meaning. She knew she could not ignore what she had found. As the sun began to set, Mira made tea and sat on the wooden bench in the backyard. Ravi played with stones near the garden. Mira watched the sky turn warm shades of orange and red. Her mind stayed focused on the notebook. She wondered how long her uncle had lived with the burden of this knowledge. She wondered if he had worried about the families every day. The next morning, Mira woke with a clear decision. She wanted to understand the situation better before taking any step. She needed someone who could read the legal details correctly. Then she remembered a lawyer named Arun, who had helped her with the inheritance papers. He seemed honest and calm. He had spoken kindly when they met. Mira searched for his number in the papers given to her earlier. She found it and hesitated for a moment before calling. When Arun answered, Mira explained that she needed to discuss some important documents left behind by her uncle. Arun agreed to visit the house the next day. His tone was steady, and he did not ask unnecessary questions. That day passed slowly. Mira organized the rooms and cleaned the kitchen again, trying to distract herself. Ravi helped by trimming some of the overgrown plants in the garden. When he found an old watering can near the fence, he began watering dry flowers with great care. Mira smiled at the sight. The house was beginning to feel alive again in the evening. Mira took out the box once more and read the notebook again from the beginning. She wanted to understand every detail clearly before Arun arrived. This time she noticed small things she had missed earlier, such as the way her uncle had included drawings of land boundaries, or how he had carefully copied sections of documents to show differences between real and fake signatures. The notebook was not messy. It was organized with great care. The more she read, the more she admired her uncle's patience. She realized he had been a quiet observer who noticed details others ignored. Mira felt grateful that he had trusted her with something so important. She closed the notebook gently and placed it back inside the box before going to bed. That night, Mira could not sleep easily. She kept thinking about the gold, the notebook, and her uncle's choice to hide them under the attic floor. She wondered how long he had planned to keep it hidden. She wondered if he had hoped someone would continue his work. No. She felt a strong sense of purpose growing within her. When morning came, she prepared breakfast and waited for Arun. She opened the windows to let the fresh air in. As she waited, she noticed the house felt different. It felt as if it had accepted her presence. The rooms no longer seemed heavy with silence. They felt warm and expectant. When Arun arrived at noon, Mira invited him inside and offered him tea. She explained everything calmly and placed the wooden box on the table. Arun listened carefully. He did not interrupt or show surprise. He simply nodded as she spoke. Mira felt grateful for his calm nature. She lifted the notebook and handed it to him. Arun studied the pages slowly. His expression changed from curiosity to seriousness. He said the documents were indeed important and needed careful handling. The next morning arrived with a soft gray sky, and Mira woke with a tired mind, but a strong sense of purpose. She had slept only a few hours, and even that sleep had been broken. Every time she closed her eyes, she kept seeing the old metal box, the hidden papers, the gold, and the strange message that Martin had whispered before falling asleep again. She moved quietly around the house so she would not wake him. She did not want him to feel stressed or scared. Mira heated some water for tea and opened all the windows to let in the cool morning air. The house felt more peaceful than the night before. The light coming through the curtains made the living room brighter and softer. Still, something felt unsettled in the air. It was not fear, but a kind of pressure, as if the house was holding old secrets tightly inside its walls. While she prepared breakfast for Martin, she kept thinking about the papers she had read in the night. Each page had added one more layer of confusion. The warning note had been short, but the numbers and names on the other pages felt important. They looked like records of some trading that her uncle had been doing years ago. There were dates, there were sums of money, and there were names she had never heard before. It was strange to read because her uncle had lived a very simple life, but these papers suggested he had been part of something far bigger. After she placed a plate of toast on the table, she sat down and took a slow breath. She needed a clear plan. She needed to protect herself and her son without assuming anything bad. The warning inside the metal box did not prove that someone wanted to harm her. It only showed that her uncle had been afraid of something long ago. Maybe whatever had scared him was no longer a problem. When Martin woke up and came to the kitchen rubbing his eyes, Myra smiled at him. She wanted him to feel safe. He sat down and began eating without asking many questions. She knew he had sensed the tension from the day before, but he trusted her. That trust made her feel stronger. Once breakfast was over, Mira suggested they take a walk outside. They needed fresh air. The property was large, with a wide field behind the house that led to a small line of trees. There was a narrow dirt path her uncle used to walk on, and Mira followed it with Martin beside her, holding her hand. The morning breeze felt cool against their skin and carried a fresh scent of wet soil and leaves as they walked. She noticed again how quiet the land was. No traffic, no crowds. Only nature. The silence made everything louder in her mind. She kept thinking about the papers locked in her drawer. She had promised herself last night that she would not hide the truth from Martin again. But she still did not know how to explain complex things to a young child. While walking down the path, she saw a wooden bench under an old tree. The bench had probably been here for decades. She sat down, and Martin ran around the tree happily. Mira smiled for a moment, grateful for the small joy. She wanted more days like this. She wanted safety and peace for her family. But peace did not come easily. As she rested on the bench, she heard footsteps on the far side of the trees. They were not loud or fast. They sounded like the steps of someone walking in a calm and normal way. Mira saw a figure appear between the trees. At first, her chest tightened. But then she relaxed when she recognized it was the man named Samir, who lived 2 houses down the road. He had visited them before, had introduced himself kindly, and had even helped them carry a heavy box inside. He waved when he saw her and smiled, as if he had simply been enjoying his morning walk too. Mira greeted him politely. The presence of another person on the land felt strange but not threatening. Samir walked closer and stopped a few steps away. Keeping a respectful distance, he asked how she and Martin were settling into the place. Mira said they were doing fine. She mentioned nothing about the gold or the papers. She only said they were slowly learning more about the house her uncle had left behind. Samir talked about the nearby town and how the community was friendly. He spoke in a gentle tone, and Mira felt comfortable listening to him. But one thing he said caught her attention. He mentioned that her uncle had been a very private man. Samir said he had rarely seen him, except during the early mornings when he walked along this same path. He said her uncle always carried a notebook and looked deep in thought. Myra asked him if he knew anything about her uncle's work. Samir shook his head. He said he believed her uncle had retired from some kind of job long before Mira ever visited him. He described him as a quiet man who kept to himself but was polite when approached. That matched what she remembered from childhood. Her uncle had never been talkative. He always seemed thoughtful, almost distant. She had never guessed he might have been involved in anything complicated. She wondered if Samir knew more, but chose not to share it. She could not be sure. After a little more conversation, Samir said goodbye and continued his walk. Mira watched him leave. His presence had calmed her slightly. It reminded her that not everything around her was about secrets and hidden stories. There were normal people too. She and Martin walked back to the house. Once inside, she brewed more tea and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. She needed to organize her thoughts. She made a list of everything she had learned so far. She wrote the items in simple, short sentences. Metal box found. Gold coins found. Warning note from uncle. Pages with names and numbers. Paper with drawing of old building. Neighbor knew uncle, but not well. Then she wrote a list of what she needed to do. Research names on paper. Learn why uncle wrote warning. Find out why gold was hidden. Keep Martin safe. Stay calm. Seeing the lists on paper made her feel more controlled. She no longer felt surrounded by confusion. The facts were still strange, but they were clearer now. Later that day, she went to the small library in the nearby town. She took Martin with her and asked him to sit in the children's corner while she read. She searched through local history books, hoping to find something about the old building drawn on one of the papers. After looking through 3 books, she found a picture that looked similar. It was an old storage house that had belonged to a trading company many years ago. The book said the building had been abandoned after a fire. The trading company had shut down soon after that. She felt a chill move up her arms as she stared at the picture. Her uncle's drawing was nearly the same as the photo in the book. Why had he drawn it? What did the trading company have to do with anything? And how did this connect to the gold in the box? She checked the names on the papers next. None of them appeared in the library records. She wondered if they were names of people involved with the trading company or with her uncle in some old work project. She did not know. There was so much she still needed to understand. But she did not want to rely on fear or guesswork. She decided she would visit the old storage house the next day. She would go during the day when the sun was bright and Martin was safe with her. She believed that a place from the past might give her more answers than she could find from papers. As she closed the book and placed it back on the shelf, she looked over at Martin, playing quietly with a puzzle. He was happy and calm. Seeing him like that filled her with new strength. She was not alone. She had her son, and she had time. She was careful and thoughtful. She would not rush into danger. When they returned home that evening, she made dinner and spent the night cleaning old shelves, organizing things, and putting away the papers in a safe place. She wanted the house to feel normal again. She played soft music to make the rooms feel warm. She baked cookies with Martin and read him a story before bed, but after he fell asleep, she went to her room and opened the drawer again. She looked at the papers one more time, the numbers, the names, and the drawing. She studied the handwriting carefully. On one of the pages, she noticed a small mark near the corner, something she had missed before. It was a single letter. The letter looked like part of a word but had been cut off by the edge of the paper. The letter was an R. It meant nothing by itself. But she knew it must have been part of some larger word, maybe a name or location. She made a note of it and placed the papers back. As she lay in bed, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would visit the old storage house. She would go early, walk through the place, take photos, and see if anything there connected to her uncle. She wanted to know why he had feared something enough to hide gold and papers. She wanted to know what secrets he had protected all his life. But most of all, she wanted clarity. She wanted a calm life for her son, and she believed that understanding the past was the only way to truly secure their future. With that thought, she finally closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, unaware that the next day would bring more answers than she expected, and far more questions than she felt ready for. Mira had never imagined that her life would change because of a small key placed inside a plain brown envelope. She received the envelope on a warm afternoon while returning from her work at a local cafe. The mailman handed it to her with a friendly smile, unaware of how unusual it was for Mira to get any mail other than bills. The envelope carried the name of a lawyer she vaguely remembered from her childhood. When she opened it inside her small apartment, she found the key, a short letter, and a legal document explaining that she had inherited her late uncle, Harisha's countryside house. Myra had not seen her uncle in many years. He was her father's older brother, a quiet man who preferred to stay far from the noise of the city. Her father used to say that Harish liked to live close to nature because it gave him peace. After Mira's parents passed away in a road accident, Mira and her son Ravi were left without many relatives. This made the letter even more surprising. Uncle Harish had lived alone for many years, and Mira had no idea he remembered her enough to leave her his house. She felt a mix of shock and curiosity as she read the details of the inheritance. Mira was a single mother and worked long hours to support her son. The idea of owning a house, even an old one in the countryside, seemed like a small miracle. Their apartment rent kept increasing every year, and Myra wanted a more stable life for Ravi. She spent that entire evening staring at the key. It was old and slightly rusted, but it carried weight in her hand, almost as if it held a story she had not yet heard. That night, after putting Ravi to sleep, she sat on the edge of her bed thinking about the opportunity. Moving to the countryside might be difficult, but it could also give them a peaceful life that the city never offered. She finally decided to visit the house the following weekend. When Saturday arrived, Myra packed a small bag, prepared lunch for Ravi, and took a bus to the countryside. The trip took nearly 3 hours. Ravi sat by the window, fascinated by the fields, the tall trees, and the wide open sky. Mira watched him with a soft smile. She hoped the move, if she chose to make it, would be good for him. He deserved a place where he could run freely and play without worrying about noisy streets or crowded buildings. The countryside air felt fresh the moment they stepped off the bus. Mira breathed deeply, letting the calmness settle inside her. She followed the directions on the lawyer's letter and walked along a narrow dirt road that stretched ahead like a brown ribbon. The road was lined with bushes and tall grass that swayed gently in the breeze. Birds called from the trees, and the sunlight danced through the leaves. When the house finally came into view, Mira stopped walking. It looked older than she expected, but also strangely welcoming. The house had a slanted roof covered with faded tiles, white walls that had lost some of their brightness, and windows framed with dark wood. A wooden fence surrounded the small yard, and behind the house was a patch of land with overgrown plants. The house was not big or fancy, but it had a quiet charm that made Mira feel as if she had stepped into a forgotten chapter of her.
I'll hug.
Ravi ran toward the gate with excitement. He touched the fence, looked around the yard, and called out to Mira that he liked the house already. Mira smiled and walked to the front door. She stood there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of responsibility and curiosity. With a deep breath, she placed the old key into the lock. It turned smoothly, as if the house had been waiting for her. Inside, the air smelled slightly dusty, but not unpleasant. Sunlight entered the front room through a large window, lighting up the wooden floor. Mira noticed a few old pieces of furniture, including a sofa, a wooden chair, and a shelf filled with books. Everything looked untouched, as if Uncle Harish had stepped out for a short walk and never returned. There was a silence in the house that felt peaceful, not frightening. Mira walked slowly through the rooms, observing every corner with careful eyes. She found the kitchen with old stone tiles, a small dining table, and a kettle that looked like it had been used for many years. She opened the cupboards and found a few mugs, plates, and jars that once held spices. In the bedroom, she saw a simple bed with a neatly folded blanket and a wooden chest at the foot of the bed. She hesitated before opening the chest, but found only clothing inside, folded with care. Ravi followed her everywhere, asking questions and exploring with wide eyes. He found a small wooden box under the bed, but when Myra opened it, she discovered nothing inside except a few dried leaves, probably from a plant her uncle liked. The house felt quiet but not empty of memories. Mira sensed her uncle's gentle nature in the way everything was arranged. After exploring the inside, Mira stepped out into the backyard. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the tall grass. The yard looked like it had once been a small garden. There were signs of old flower beds and a wooden bench under a tree. The bench was slightly worn, as if someone had spent long hours sitting there, reading or watching the sunset. Mira imagined her uncle sitting there with a cup of tea. She sat on the bench, letting the peacefulness wash over her. She listened to the distant sound of water, possibly from a small stream nearby. Ravi ran around the yard laughing, calling out whenever he spotted something interesting like a butterfly or a bright stone. Mira watched him with a warm feeling growing in her chest. As she sat there, she thought about her uncle. She realized she knew very little about his life in this house. Why had he chosen to live so far from the city? What made him keep his life so private? And more importantly, why had he chosen to leave the house to her? Was there a reason beyond simple family ties? Questions stayed in her mind as she walked around the house again. This time she looked more carefully. The house was old, but it was strong. The wooden beams were steady, and the walls showed no sign of cracks. The roof needed repair, and the garden needed attention, but nothing seemed impossible to fix. Mira imagined herself cleaning the rooms, painting the walls, planting flowers, and creating a home where she and Ravi could feel safe. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mira and Ravi sat on the front steps to eat the lunch she had packed. As they ate, Mira told Ravi that she was thinking about moving there permanently. Ravi's face lit up with excitement. He said he would help her clean the house and make it beautiful. His enthusiasm warmed Mira's heart. They spent the next hour sitting together, watching the colors of the sky shift slowly. A gentle quietness surrounded them. Mira felt calm in a way she had not felt in a long time. For the first time in months, her worries felt lighter. She did not know if moving there would solve all her problems. But it felt like the right step. As they prepared to leave, Mira took one last walk around the house. She ran her hand along the wooden doorframe, feeling the small grooves carved by age. She looked up at the windows and imagined warm lights glowing inside during winter. She pictured herself reading a book by the window while Ravi played in the yard. The house seemed to offer a promise of a fresh beginning. Before leaving, Mira locked the door carefully. The sound of the key turning felt meaningful, as if she was closing one chapter of her life and slowly opening another. She placed the key back in her bag and walked with Ravi toward the bus stop. The countryside night sky stretched above them, filled with countless stars. Ravi walked beside her, holding her hand. He hummed a little tune, happy and content. Mira felt grateful for the quiet moment. She knew life had not been easy for them, but maybe things were finally changing for the better. When they reached home that evening, Mira could not stop thinking about the house. She imagined cleaning every room, setting up Ravi's bed near the window, cooking meals in the old kitchen, and planting flowers in the garden. She wondered if her uncle had planned for her to find something more than just a house. There was a sense of mystery in the air, a feeling that the house had more to tell. She did not know how or when, but she felt that something unusual waited for her there, although she had not seen anything strange during her visit. She sensed that the house held secrets, not dangerous ones, but secrets of a life lived quietly. Secrets that her uncle chose not to share when he was alive. Mira felt curious and slightly uneasy in a thoughtful way, not from fear but from anticipation. As Mira lay in bed later that night, she imagined returning to the house and discovering its hidden corners. She wondered whether the creaking sounds she heard while walking through the rooms were simply signs of an old house or something more meaningful. She decided that she would not ignore anything. If the house had a story to tell, she would listen. She fell asleep with the image of the house in her mind. The slanted roof, the old bench, the quiet backyard, and the warm sunlight all stayed with her. She felt that her life was about to change in unexpected ways. The next morning arrived with a soft golden light that filled every corner of the house. Mira woke with a feeling that the day would be important. She did not know why, but she sensed that something about this day would help her understand the mystery that had been sitting inside her uncle's home like a quiet shadow. She prepared herself calmly, made breakfast for Martin, and tried to keep the morning routine as normal as possible. Today, she planned to visit the old storage house she had read about in the library. She was not sure what she would find there, but she believed it was the right step. The drawing from her uncle's papers showed that building so clearly, he would not have drawn it without reason. After breakfast, she packed a small bag with snacks, water, a notebook, her phone, and the folded papers. She wanted to compare the drawing with the actual place. She wanted to see if there was any detail that matched. She also wanted to keep Martin comfortable and safe. Her son was cheerful and excited because he thought they were going on a small adventure. Before leaving, Ira stood in the living room for a moment. She looked around the house that her uncle had left behind. She whispered a quiet thank you. She felt that the house had been trying to tell her something through the hidden box and the secret papers. She hoped she would understand everything soon. The road to the old storage house was not far from the property. It was a short drive past the field and then a narrow road that curved through tall grass and small trees. As she drove, the land around them grew more open and quiet. The world felt softer, like it was waiting for her. When the storage house came into view, Mira slowed the car. The building looked old but not broken. It stood alone in the wide field. Its walls were faded from age, and the wooden roof showed signs of weather, but it still looked strong. The place held a quiet dignity, as if it had been watching time pass without complaining. Mira parked the car under a tree. She took Martin's hand and walked toward the building. The ground was soft and dry, and the grass brushed against their legs as they moved. When they reached the old door, Mira pushed it gently. The door opened. With only a light sound of worn hinges, nothing frightening, sunlight moved inside the building through small gaps in the walls and created bright shapes on the floor. Inside, the place was empty except for a few wooden crates stacked in the corner. The air smelled like old wood and dust. The silence inside felt peaceful. Mira walked slowly through the space while Martin explored small corners. She took out the drawing from her bag. She compared the lines and angles on the paper with the actual building in front of her. The shape of the roof matched. The placement of the windows matched. Even the small crack near the left side of the door was in the same position as in the drawing. Her uncle had drawn the building with care. He must have spent time here, or had a reason to remember it clearly. As she walked deeper inside, Mira noticed a wooden board on the floor that seemed different from the others. It was slightly raised at one edge, as if someone had lifted it before. She crouched down and touched it. The wood felt smooth and old. She lifted the board carefully. Underneath was a shallow space in the ground. Inside that space was a folded cloth bag. Mira hesitated before picking it up. She did not know what she would find inside. She opened the cloth bag slowly. Inside, there were 3 items. The first was a small notebook with worn pages. The second was a simple silver key. The third was a tiny envelope with her uncle's handwriting on it. She opened the envelope first. Inside was a short note written in gentle words, not in a rushed or fearful tone. It said that if she ever found this place, she should know that everything he hid was meant to keep something honest and safe. He said the gold was not from wrongdoing. It was earned from some old trading work he had done long ago. He had kept it hidden because he did not want anyone to take advantage of it. He wrote that he trusted her to use it wisely and peacefully. Myra felt a wave of relief. For days, she had been afraid that the gold might have been connected to something harmful or dangerous. She had been concerned about her uncle's warning. But now she understood that the warning was not about people trying to harm her. It was about her uncle wanting her to be careful with the information. He wanted her to protect her future, not fear it. She opened the small notebook next. Inside, her uncle had written about the trading company he once worked for. He explained how the business began to fall apart after the fire. Many people left. He stayed behind only to help manage some of the leftover supplies. Over time, he discovered that some records had been lost, and some gold payments had not been reported correctly. He took responsibility for keeping things honest. He believed that someday the gold might be needed for someone in the family. He kept the gold safely hidden and never used it. As Mira read, she felt a deep respect for her uncle. He had been a quiet man, but he had been strong and thoughtful. He had cared about honesty and fairness. The gold was not a burden. It was a gift saved from a time of confusion. The key inside the cloth bag was the last item. Mira held it in her hand. It was small and silver, with a tiny number carved on one side. She did not know what it opened. She checked the building again to see if there was anything that matched the key, but she found nothing. She believed the key must belong to something in the house, not the storage place. She would check later, but she kept it safe in her pocket. As she finished reading, she looked around the old building again. The place felt brighter now. It no longer felt mysterious. It felt like a memory her uncle had left behind with love. She felt grateful. After taking pictures and making notes, Mira closed the wooden board, put everything back in her bag, and stepped outside. The sun was higher now. The day felt warm. She and Martin walked back to the car. Her heart felt much lighter. She looked at the wide field in front of her. The world around her felt calm again. On the drive home, she kept thinking about the key. She wondered what hidden part of the house had opened. She wondered if there was one more message left for her. When they reached home, Mira prepared lunch. After eating, she told Martin to rest for a while. Then she began searching the house. She checked drawers, cabinets, and old boxes. Nothing matched the key. She explored the attic next. The attic was quiet and filled with old furniture and dusty books. She searched every shelf. She found an old chest in the corner. When she touched the lock, she felt a small spark of recognition. The lock had the same number carved on it as the key. She opened the chest carefully. Inside were letters and photos from many years ago. There were pictures of her uncle when he was young. There were photos of her mother and other family members. There were letters her uncle had written but never sent. These letters were gentle and reflective. They talked about his desire to keep the family safe and united. At the bottom of the chest, she found one more envelope. Her name was written on it. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter written for her. The handwriting was softer than the note she had read earlier. In the letter, he told her that the house belonged to her not because of inheritance alone, but because he believed she would bring life back into it. He said he had lived alone for too long. He wanted someone with warmth and kindness to make the house feel alive again. He wrote that if she ever felt afraid or confused about the gold, she should remember that it was only a resource. It was not a burden. It was not a danger. It was something he saved because he trusted her to know how to use it wisely for her and her son's future. Mira felt tears gather in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were filled with relief, gratitude, and understanding. For the first time since she arrived at the house, she felt truly peaceful. She now knew that there were no threats, no secrets meant to frighten her, no fear hidden between the pages. Everything her uncle had left behind was meant to protect, not to scare. She placed the letters back gently and closed the chest. She looked around the attic and felt a strong sense of connection to her uncle. Imagined him writing these letters, drawing the old building, hiding the box, hoping that one day she would find everything and understand. That evening, she sat with Martin on the porch. The sky was painted with soft orange and pink colors. The trees moved gently in the wind. Birds flew across the field with slow, graceful movements. Mira held her son close. She told him that everything was fine now. She said the house was a place of love and good memories. She told him their future was bright. She did not mention the gold. She would tell him about it when he grew older and could understand its meaning. She felt light inside. She felt ready to build a peaceful life here. She decided she would make the house beautiful again. She would paint the walls, fix the old shelves, plant flowers in the yard, and bring warmth into every corner. This place would become a home filled with safety. The day after Aaron's visit, Myra woke with a sense of determination. She felt that her uncle's message was calling her forward. She had spent years living a life where she only focused on survival, on paying bills, on making sure her son had what he needed. Now she held a notebook that carried the quiet courage of a man who tried to protect an entire community. It was strange how life brought unexpected responsibilities without warning. Mira felt both nervous and honored. Ravi woke up full of energy, ready to explore the backyard again. Mira prepared breakfast and watched him eat with enthusiasm. She felt grateful that the house brought joy into his life. The city had always made him restless. Here, he seemed calm and excited at the same time. After breakfast, he ran outside to check if the butterflies he saw yesterday were still around. Mira laughed softly and let him play. She sat near the window and opened the notebook again. The handwriting felt familiar now. She could almost imagine her uncle sitting at a small wooden table, writing each line with careful thought. She read slowly, absorbing every detail. Each page showed how observant her uncle had been. He had noticed small changes in signatures, unusual timing of land sales, and strange meetings between people who did not normally speak to each other. He had recorded everything with honesty. Myra paused when she reached a page where her uncle had written a personal note. It said that he had spent many nights thinking about how to help the families. He had hoped to bring the truth to someone who would listen, but he never found the right moment. He had believed that one day someone trustworthy would find his notebook and do what he could not. He ended the note with a hopeful line that said he believed in the goodness of ordinary people. Mira closed the notebook and held it close. She understood that her uncle had placed a quiet trust in whoever would find the box. Now it rested on her shoulders. She looked outside at Ravi, playing with stones near the bench. She wanted a peaceful life for him, but she also knew that protecting others was part of creating that peace. Later that morning, Mira decided to walk through the town. She wanted to understand the community better before moving forward with any decisions. She called Ravi and told him they were going for a walk. He held her hand happily as they walked along the road that led into town. The town was small, but lively. There were a few shops, a bakery, a school, and a library. People greeted Mira politely when she passed by. Some smiled at Ravi and asked his name. Mira felt comforted by the friendliness around her. She wanted to know if the families mentioned in her uncle's notebook still lived nearby. They walked into a small grocery shop to buy a few things. The shop owner, an older man named Prem, welcomed them warmly. He asked if she was new in town. Mira explained that she had inherited her uncle's house. Prem's expression softened, and he said that he remembered Horish very well. He said her uncle had been a quiet man, who always helped others in small ways. Mira asked a few simple questions about the families mentioned in the notebook. She did not mention the notebook itself. She only wanted to see if the names were familiar to Prem. He nodded at each family name, she said. He told her that many of those families had moved away in the past few years. Some had lost their land, some had sold it, and some had retired to other places. Mira felt a small tug in her heart. Her uncle had tried to help them, but maybe he had not been able to do enough. She thanked Prem and walked out with Ravi. The sun was warm, and the town looked peaceful. Yet Mira sensed how many stories lay hidden behind the quiet houses. On the way back home, they passed a tall tree with thick branches. Ravi climbed onto a low branch and swung his legs happily. Mira waited for him and thought about what her uncle had written. She knew she needed to be thoughtful. This was not something she could rush. She wanted to help, but she also wanted to keep her son's life stable. When they returned home, Mira found a small envelope slipped under her door. She picked it up with curiosity. The envelope had no name written on it. Inside, she found a single sheet of paper with a simple message. It said, "Follow your uncle's notes carefully. Truth protects itself when handled with honesty." The handwriting was unfamiliar. Mira felt surprised but not frightened. The message did not sound threatening. It felt like a reminder or encouragement from someone who knew her uncle. She wondered who had left the message. It could have been someone from town who respected her uncle, or perhaps someone her uncle had spoken to long ago. She placed the note beside the notebook on the table. She felt even more aware that her uncle's story was bigger than she had realized. She made tea and sat near the window again. The gentle sunlight filled the room, making the dust particles look like tiny stars. That evening, Mira cooked dinner and sat with Ravi at the small dining table. He talked about the butterflies, the stones he had collected, and a small lizard he had seen near the fence. His innocence made Mira smile. She felt grateful for the simple moments they shared. She knew that whatever she decided next, she had to think about Ravi's future too. After putting Ravi to bed, Mira went back to the notebook. She wanted to understand her uncle's message about truth protecting itself. She read the pages again and noticed something new. On the last page, her uncle had written another short note. It said that truth could only shine when someone brave enough carried it. Forward with patience and kindness, Mira sat quietly for a long time. She realized the notebook was not only a record of events, it was also a message about integrity, courage, and responsibility. Her uncle had tried to protect people from losing their homes. He had hidden the truth because he feared it might be lost or destroyed if it fell into the wrong hands. He had hoped someone with a steady heart would uncover it. The next morning, Mira decided to visit Arun again. She wanted clarity about the next steps. She called him and explained that she had more questions. He agreed to meet her at the house in the afternoon. While waiting, Mira cleaned the backyard. She cleared fallen leaves, pulled out weeds, and arranged stones around the old flower bed. Ravi helped by gathering sticks and placing them neatly in a corner. The garden looked brighter when they finished. When Arun arrived, he greeted them warmly. Mira invited him inside and offered tea. She showed him the new note she had found. Arun studied the handwriting and said he did not know who wrote it, but he believed it was not meant to cause fear. He explained that sometimes people who respected Horish might have known about his concerns. They might have wanted to reassure Myra. Myra felt slightly relieved. She trusted Arun's judgment. She then asked him about the information in the notebook. Arun explained that the proper way to move forward was to give the evidence to the local council. They could launch an investigation into past land transfers. It might help families protect their property or understand what had happened. Arun said the process might take time, but it was an important step. Mira listened carefully. She asked if sharing the notebook would put her in any uncomfortable situation. Arun assured her that the situation was about documentation, not personal conflict. The purpose was to help people understand the truth. Mira nodded slowly. She felt that she was beginning to understand what she needed to do. She thanked Aaron for his guidance. Before leaving, Arun told her that her uncle had always been respected by the few people who understood his quiet nature. He believed that Mira carried the same strength. After Arun left, Mira sat on the bench outside. She watched the clouds drifting across the sky. The air smelled fresh after a light drizzle earlier. Ravi played nearby, building a small structure with rocks. Mira looked at the notebook on her lap. She felt a new sense of clarity. She realized that her uncle's message was not meant to frighten. It was meant to warn her about the importance of awareness. It was a message about how carelessness could lead to losing what mattered. When her uncle wrote about people taking away everything, he meant safeness, security, and future stability. She understood it now. She placed the notebook gently in the wooden box and locked it. She felt that she had reached a new stage in her journey. The house had brought her closer to her uncle's quiet wisdom. The hidden box had opened a door to truth. She felt ready to take the next steps, even if they required courage and patience. As the sun set behind the trees, Mira walked inside and closed the door. The house felt warm, peaceful, and full of stories yet to be told. She sensed that her uncle's presence remained in the quiet corners, guiding her with gentle strength.